be honest. If you already got it on there. So I'll check with him.
So our next section here, I'm going to give you some tools in your toolbox and for how we run our volunteering. Some different ways at looking at volunteering that is going to unleash a lot of disciple-making power in your church. And it's going to be flipping a few things on its head. First of all, sometimes I talk about breaking down that whole process of Joe Pagan looking like the Apostle Paul into 3 chunks. And I call it the 3 laws of church growth. And I call them laws because if you do them, your church will grow. But also, you can flip them upside down and use them as a diagnostic tool that if you're not growing as fast as you like, this will help you figure out where. So the 3 laws are: number 1, invite lots of people. Law number 2, don't suck. Law number 3, have people make friends. So pastors come and say like, yeah, we never have any first-time visitors. Well, you're not inviting. Okay. Other pastors say, oh yeah, we have lots of first-time visitors. They come once and they never come back. Okay, that means something sucks. When a visitor comes to your church, they come hoping something is good is going to happen. Whether they're church, de-churched, unchurched, they're coming because they're hoping it's going to be a positive experience. If they come once and they never come back, it was a negative experience. Now, what sucked? I don't know. Some of our churches are so dirty, their light fixtures are all filled with dead bugs, their bathrooms are gross. Maybe that was the problem. Other churches have really grumpy greeters and hostile ushers. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe it was terrible music. Maybe it was a boring sermon. Like, I don't know what happened, but something went wrong. Where other churches say, no. People come, they come back for a few weeks, maybe even a few months, but then they drift off. Well, that means they're not making friends. And it's super important for us to understand that friendship component. Here's something that's worth writing down. People come to church for many reasons, but they only stay for one. And that's they made friends here. So that's an important thing. I teach a class at Vanguard on how to vitalize churches. And one of the assignments I give to my students is that they go out and do secret shopper visits at 3 churches they've never been to and don't know anybody yet. To sort of feel what it feels like to be a newcomer. And then also to see, well, how are these churches treating you? And this one student went to some old Baptist church in North Edmonton. I don't know which church. But he came back and he said, yeah, it wasn't a real positive experience. You know, it was a crusty old building, crusty old views, and crusty old hymns, and a crusty old band, and a crusty old suit with a crusty old sermon. And the last line of the assignment, I asked a question. If there was a non-Christian friend that you knew and really cared about, would you send them to check out this church? And he said no. But then he said, but after church, there was a group of about 10 young adults there who came up and talked to me, some of them being girls, and they invited me out for pizza. So while I would never send a non-Christian there, I'm going back. Relationship is king. That's why it's not good enough to be a friend of church. You have to be friends. Now, sometimes I say, when I talk about friendship at church, people think, oh, that's unspiritual. What does that have to do with spiritual? Well, quite frankly, a lot. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but Jesus actually knew the disciples. They spent time together, they walked together, they talked together, they had barbecue together, they went on road trips together, they went water skiing once, or Peter did. Jesus actually knew the disciples. Jesus called the disciples his friends. That was really, really, really important. But I mean, if Jesus is asking us to follow him, maybe paying attention to how he does things might help. And if Jesus discipled the disciples, maybe we can get clues on how to disciple people by looking at Jesus. Discipleship happens within the context of relationship. Now, I've got a degree in church history. And I can tell you that in 2,000 years of church history, whenever we've tried to do discipleship without relationship, it hasn't worked. Discipleship happens in the context of relationship. People come to church for many reasons, but they only stay for one, and that's that they made friends. So important. Now, how does volunteering fit into this? Well, first, teaching people to serve is one of the most important things we can do. If Jesus is going to be Lord of their life, he must also be Lord of their time. Remember I said before, Jesus said, follow me. It's like an action. Now, some people say, well, you know what? I already followed him, and I'm done doing following him. I already did my time. Okay, so you're telling me you're not a follower of Jesus now. Because if you're not following Jesus, you're not following Jesus. So is he the Lord of our life? Then he has to be the Lord of my time. Now this is super important, and this is a game changer right here. We don't use people to accomplish tasks. We use tasks to develop people. So when you look at the Gospels, how did Jesus disciple the disciples? He didn't give them jobs to do to fulfill organizational needs. He gave them jobs to do to grow them. So right at the beginning, Jesus was just, hey, come and watch. And then he gave them small little tasks. So, Andrew, Bartholomew, can you go to town and see if you can get some food? Oh, the stores are all closed. Can you find food somewhere else? We got this kid. Okay, so they weren't really good at it. Jesus had to, bail them out a few times. But he gives them progressively more difficult and more challenging tasks. He starts sending them out without him to cast demons out of people. He sends them out 2 by 2 to tell about Jesus in other towns. And by the end of the story, I don't know if you remember this, Jesus says, I've got this construction project of mansions up in heaven. Can you take care of Christianity for me until I get back? Okay? Don't use people to accomplish tasks. We use tasks to develop people. We pastor our people. We don't use them. So any of us who is in a leadership role, you need to look at your volunteers in a completely different light. We're pastoring them, not using them. And any assignment we give, any way we stretch them, it's because this is part of discipleship. Now, most churches don't use volunteering as for discipleship, and so most volunteers don't find it a very discipling kind of experience. But when we do, it works powerfully. Now, what do volunteers need? Many of you are volunteers, so some of you can answer this pretty easily. Well, one of the first things a volunteer needs is work that they care about. If a volunteer gets pressed into action about something that they're not passionate about, that's no fun. So if they need work that they care about, we must find their passion. So a common mistake we make in our churches is we have need-based volunteering rather than gift-based volunteering. So, Larry here, Larry moves away. Well, who's going to do Larry's job? You might have a pulse. Why don't you do Larry's job? Well, and we do that all the time, do we not? When we do that, and I didn't find out what your passions were, what was burning on your heart, I just stuck you into a role because you were like willing, kind of could be guilted into the situation. We end up having, over time, all the volunteers in the whole church serving in areas that they're not passionate about. Well, how's that going to be awesome? But when we use gift-based volunteering, where I'm not trying to figure out what roles I have for you to fill, I'm going to find out what your passions are. And then connect you to something God has already put on your heart. When we have everybody in the church serving in areas they're passionate about, you think that might make your church better? So that's something key that we need to do. Volunteers also need work that they're good at. That this actually fits what they can do. So we have to find their gifts. Now, 90% of the time, someone's passion is going to be directly connected to their gifts. 90% of the time, you find their passion, you're going to find their gifts right away. But 10% of the time, they're going to be passionate about something that they're bad at. What do we need to do then? And this requires a little creativity. When I went to seminary, there was a student a few years ahead of us. So I never met him, but I certainly he told me his story. He shows up at seminary, passionate that God has called him to be a preacher. The problem was he had a severe speech impediment, and he could not say a single sentence without stuttering all over it. But he felt called to be a preacher. Well, he told people who asked that he was convinced that God was going to heal him. Because how could God call him to something and not equip him? So the first year, he was confident in God's healing. First year, God didn't heal him. Second year, his fellow students are starting to question him. Dude, are you sure God's called you to be a preacher? Because you can't preach. He was confident, God has called me to be a preacher. God's going to heal me. God did not heal him in the second year. In his third year of his master's degree, his professors are saying, son, are you sure God's called you to be a preacher? Because you can't preach. And he was confident, no, God has called me to be a preacher. I know he's going to heal me. In his third year, God did not heal him. Now, is that man a pastor today? Best of my knowledge, yes, he is. In fact, he communicates with his congregation with perfect clarity. There isn't a single person in his congregation that hears him misspeak a single word. Did God heal that man? No. He pastors a church for the deaf. So when our passions and our gifts don't line up, sometimes we just need a little bit of creativity. So where we see this most common in our churches is actually when it comes to music. That you'll have someone who's passionate about worship, who's passionate about music, but can't carry a tune in a bucket. Well, what do we do then? Well, there's a couple of things that we can do. One, the most important musical instrument on that stage is this one. That PowerPoint goes down, everything stops. So some of the people who are passionate about worship but aren't musically gifted, they can sometimes serve on our tech team. Another place for people who are passionate about worship but can't carry a tune in a bucket, there can be a secondary but super important role in worship leading for them. See, there's two physical locations where worship leading happens. One, the most obvious, is for the people up on stage. Less obvious, but sometimes just as much as influential, is from the front row. If you're sitting in the second row and you see people in the front row worshiping God passionately, it gives you subtle but powerful permission for you to engage worship passionately. If you're in the third row and now you see the front two rows worshiping passionately, it gives you powerful permission to worship passionately. So influence in worship leading, there's a worship leading from the front of the church and it goes back. It doesn't work the other way around because we don't have eyes in the back of our head. You got really passionate worshipers sitting in the back pew, they influence no one. But you have passionate worshipers sitting in the front, they will lead and influence the whole congregation. So one of the things I tell churches is find your passionate worshipers, maybe even your worship teams that aren't on this Sunday, and have them sit in the front. I often encourage staff to sit in the front. Get those people sitting in the front. And if you have somebody that, I really want to lead worship, I can give you a position where you are going to have leadership influence in that congregation. And it's sitting right in the front row. And you just give your all to Jesus. And you will have a powerful impact on the whole congregation. And if you're really bad at singing, you're sitting in the very front, so your voice is... Okay? Just creativity. So, that's what I'm talking about. When there isn't a connection between passion and gifts, God didn't give them that passion on accident. There's still a role for them to fill. We need to use up the brains God gave us to find that. Volunteers need work that they're confident about. If you've ever been given a job where you felt, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not confident, I'm not good at this, that's a terrible, terrible experience. So we have to train them. I told you the story where, as a 19-year-old right out of first year of Bible school, they stuck me in the grade 6 boys Sunday school classroom and didn't give me any training. That was terrible. I never wanted to teach Sunday school again. The idea before I got there sounded awesome. Wouldn't it be awesome to teach grade 6 boys? I love grade 6 boys. Grade 6 boys are so cool. But without giving any training, that's not cool. We do this with ushers, we do this with greeters, we do this with people all the time. We give them a role, but we don't give them any training, and that just sets them up, that doesn't set them up for the win at all. And you're not going to keep that volunteer very long. Volunteers also need to have fun. But really, if your volunteers are having fun volunteering, they want to be on the schedule every week. You don't have to do this, oh my goodness, I did that 6 weeks ago, am I on already? No, when it's fun, yeah, I want to do it. So we need to create a positive culture. It's our job as leaders to create the culture for our team. We're the ones who create the atmosphere. We're the ones who guide the attitude. So when we're positive, when we're encouraging, and we create a fun environment, hey, when you serve on my usher team, we're going to have a great time. That's easy to keep those volunteers. And just think about it. Put yourself in their shoes. Wouldn't it be nice to do something that you're passionate about? Wouldn't it be nice to do something that you're good at? Something that you're well trained about and that's fun? It's not hard to get volunteers to do that. You're going to have super committed volunteers. They need to have significance. Volunteers in their heart of hearts are going to need to know that what I'm doing really matters. Because on the hard days, when I've been working overtime, when I'm exhausted, I've got a bit of a headache, fun isn't that appealing anymore. I need to have a deeper reason. So we need to regularly inspire them. So what am I talking about? So one of the tools in our toolbox, and seriously, one of the best ideas I've ever stolen, is something that we call the VIP meeting. And I totally stole that name from them too. Which stands for Vision, Information, Prayer. It's a meeting we have with our volunteers 25 minutes before the service starts. It's a 4-minute meeting. It's really short. And it starts off with a 100-second vision talk. Now, It's not a 10-minute vision talk, it's a 100-second vision talk, in which I would give them bits of inspiration. So for example, if you were on my host teams, and that's ushers, greeters, lobby hosts, those connecty people. If you were on my host teams, what I would tell you frequently on a regular basis is that you are the message before the message. If somebody comes in here and they don't feel welcome, they don't feel included, they don't feel loved, I can be standing on stage, telling them about the gospel, standing on my head, juggling fire, and they're not going to believe me. But if somebody comes in here, and they don't get just like a fake Walmart greeting, they feel loved, they feel welcome, they feel accepted. It's like they've come home to a family they didn't even know that they had. And there's something different about this place. And then when I tell them about the love of God, they're going to believe it because they've already experienced it. When you serve on my host teams, you will change lives. You will change destinies. You, because of the love you have demonstrated people, will see more people enter into the kingdom of heaven. That's what happens when you serve on my host teams. If you serve in my Sunday school department, the difference you make in the life of this small child will be felt for decades. I remember when I was 4 years old, I went to Wee College at Central Pentecostal in Edmonton. And I can't remember the faces of the middle-aged women who taught me, but I remember the lessons. And I remember at certain important crossroads in my life where their teaching came back and changed the course that I was walking on. That little snotty-nosed kid that they loved and taught. They've changed my life. They've changed my marriage. They've changed the way I raise my children and will affect the way my grandchildren. When you serve in our children's ministry, long after you're put in a pine box and everybody living have forgotten your name, your impact is still going to be felt in the generations in this community. If you serve on my cleanup team, do you realize one of the top 5 reasons consistently on surveys why a first-time visitor will not return to a church is because of dirty bathrooms? When you clean up that disgusting mess in the bathroom, nobody in the church is going to notice. Nobody's going to notice when you do a good job. But your Father in heaven is going to see you. And because you cleaned up that mess, there are going to be more people who stay, more people who need Jesus because of what you did in secret. You will do a great and mighty thing, and your Father in heaven will reward you when you serve on my cleanup team. Now, how many people want to volunteer on cleanup team now? We need to know that what we're doing matters. That needs to be given to us regularly, that when I serve as a youth group leader, as a maintenance guy, as a sound man, whatever the role I'm playing, somebody needs to help me see that this is significant, that I'm contributing. Jesus said, if you follow me, I will make you fishers of men. Now, too often when we think of fishing, we only think of modern rod and reel fishing. But what he was talking about was net fishing, where we work as a team to fish. Yes, I might be the guy standing on the stage explaining the gospel, but the sound man is holding part of the net. The ushers are holding part of the net. The people who clean this room are holding part of the net. The guy who fixed that light last week is holding part of the net. It's net fishing. We're doing this as a team. So even though you're the guy who just fixed the light 2 weeks ago that was burnt out, you know what? that soul who came to Christ, he's one of yours too. It's a team effort. Volunteers need to have friends. You know, one of the number one reasons, in fact, it's not one of them, it is the number one reason. Why does a new person to church volunteer in the first place? What is their number one motivation? Is that they're an outsider and they want to be an insider. They like what's going on, they love what's going on, they want to be part of the team, they want to be part of the action, they want to be part of the family. And so often we take that first time volunteers and oh, we've got a role for you. And we take them and we put them way off by themselves. And they realize, I'm still an outsider. I'm not part of the team. You know, we complain regularly that 20% of the people who do 80% of the work. But if you look at that 80% of the people who aren't doing much, you're going to see a lot of former volunteers there. You know what? We as leaders need to take ownership of that 80%. Because we're the ones who put a lot of them there. You're going to find a lot of mistreated volunteers there. They need to have friends. So what do we need to do? I have a rule in my church that nobody serves alone. So I wouldn't have just one person scrubbing toilets. There were two people scrubbing toilets together. I wouldn't have just one usher at this door. I'd have two ushers. I only need one. I'm going to still have two. Every role, I'm going to make sure that nobody serves alone. That when I join a team, there's somebody with me. Now, sure enough, I might have a pair of greeters. I will instruct them that when people are coming in, our focus is on them. We don't want to be talking and people not getting greeted. No, we need to do our jobs. But during lulls, we're free to connect. I don't want anybody serving alone. And our teams also need social activities. So if you're the head usher of usher team number 2, you don't have to do this every week, but at least once a month, after church, go to Laura's or Tim Hortons. Like, do something with your team. Maybe invite them over to your house for board games or barbecue or bowling or basketball or something else that starts with B. We need to have teams that feel like teams. If your job as a leader is to give that spiritual and emotional support, we need to know our teams. They need to feel like a team. And then when I join your team, I'm not just given a job, I'm given a family. Does that make sense? So the volunteering process. Again, this is just basic golden rule thinking. Put ourselves in somebody's shoes. A classic mistake that I made as a pastor. I remember talking at a staff meeting at our church in Saskatchewan and thinking like, wow, we don't have enough volunteers around here. How come we don't have enough volunteers? There's something wrong with those people out there. And then, after I was done at that church, there was a little season where I was in between churches. And we started to attend this church that, quite frankly, was great preaching. Wow, great preaching. And good music. Like, we liked what was going on in this church. And I wanted to be part of the team. Like, boy, we really want to support what's going on here. But who do you talk to? And I'd ask around, and nobody seemed to know how I could volunteer. And I even talked to a couple pastors, and he didn't seem to know. I mean, it was like, you had to know a guy who knows a guy in order to volunteer on that church. Like, seriously, it's easier to buy drugs than it is to volunteer in most churches. So we need to make it easy and obvious for people to join our team. So we developed a process to help people get plugged in. First, to inform them. So at the end of every service, we'd always give people their next steps. We want to give our call to action right at the end of the service so they can act. Sometimes we put the call to action like before the sermon, and so I have to listen to a whole sermon and still remember what I'm supposed to do. That doesn't work. So we didn't inform them, and what we informed them is, hey, if you want to join our team, you want to be part of the action that happens here, just go out in the lobby and talk to Tina at the red table. So we make them know, we did that every single Sunday. You want to join our team, talk to Tina at the red table. So everybody knew, oh, if you want to join the team, there's something I can do. Then connect them. Make sure you have Tina at the red table. Now, it doesn't have to be Tina, the table doesn't have to be red. But there should be somebody that they can connect with. Not, well, hopefully you'll find somebody somewhere, ask around. And if you're a team lead, I mean, from your perspective, sometimes it's hard to find volunteers, because what am I supposed to do? It's just like you're like an insurance salesman and start just randomly grabbing people in the lobby. Hey, do you want to help? Do you want to help too? Okay, have a connection point and a connection person. We want to put them in the right spot. So what Tina would do would find out what people's passions were. Now some people, particularly if they're unchurched, they might not know what their passions are. So Tina had 2 arrows in her quiver for this. The first thing what she'd do would be a volunteer tour. So she said, okay, come back next Sunday, 20 minutes before the service, and meet me right here, and I will give you a volunteer tour. And what Tina would do is she would take that person and say, hey, these are our ushers. And introduce ushers, this is what ushers do. And these are our lobby hosts. They connect with people around, and get them a coffee. And here's our coffee team. They make the coffee, and here's our tech guys. And this is what our tech guys do. And here, let me take you to our Sunday school department. These are what the Sunday school department people do. And so she'd just give them a tour so they could see and meet some of the people who are operating in the different areas. And then, this is her second arrow, would be job shadowing. And she'd say, is there one or more than one of these roles that you'd like to job shadow at? And I said, you know what, I kind of like those usher guys, and I also want to see what goes on in preschool. Okay, so next week, she would be assigned, okay, you're going to meet with Brad, and Brad's just going to keep you on wing, and you're just going to usher alongside him, and he'll show you the ropes. And then the week after that, you're going to be working with Dave in the preschool, and he'll show you the ropes. And then go back and talk to Tina, and Tina would say, okay, so did either one of those work for you? Would you like to try something else? I really, really like those ushers. Great. Then train them. You'd get a written job description, a how-to thing, and then Brad did an awesome job of showing you how to do this, so that you would receive some good training. And quite frankly, we had a really sophisticated ushering strategy and system. We had awesome ushers. But receive training. Or if it was on the tech team, man, we had an amazing tech team, amazing cameramen, they would receive the training. Then inspire them. Those VIP meetings. Those VIP meetings were golden. Now, it wasn't just inspiration. That was part of it. Sometimes we do what we call micro-training. So again, it's a 100-second talk, you're going to be changing it up. But I'll give you an example of a micro-training. Some of you may have heard this already. But have you ever had the fear of going up to a newcomer, welcoming the newcomer, and then that newcomer say, I've been here for 4 years? Okay? A lot of us have had that fear. And quite frankly, that may have happened already to you. It didn't make you feel very good. And you may have heard stories. Well, I used to go to the Alliance Church, but then, after being there for 4 years, people came and said, well, you must be new here. I was so offended. So we have this fear of accidentally greeting newcomers, and they're not newcomers. And so when we see somebody that we're not sure if we recognize or not, I sure hope somebody else greets them. Okay, that's what we do, is it not? Okay, so here's a micro training. I'm going to show you how to do this. When you see somebody you're not sure if you recognize, the question to ask is, hi, how long have you been coming here? And then no matter what they say, your answer is, I thought so. So, hey, how long have you been coming here? 9 years. I thought so. Hey, how long have you been coming here? It's my first time. I thought so. And you're not even lying because you didn't know. You had a range in your mind. Maybe they've been here for 9 years. Maybe their first time visiting. Okay, so a micro training is just a little thing like that that just helps us do our job. Oh, now I don't have to be afraid of newcomers because I know what to say and I know what to say back. Okay, so we want to do that at those VIP meetings. We want to encourage friendships. Again, this is telling our leaders, whether it's youth group leaders, whether it's Sunday school leaders, usher leaders, tech team leaders, whoever the leaders are, worship team leaders, that every once in a while after church, we should go for lunch at Tim Hortons. We should do something together. Make that team feel like a team. And we want to mentor them. Again, volunteering is part of discipleship. We don't use people, we pastor them. All right, discussion time here. Only one discussion question here. As a leader, how could you do even better? Because I sort of assume you guys are already awesome. But how could you do even better at supporting your team? Based on some of the things we talked about. Let's talk about that for a few
John mentioned, we've been working with churches now for just about 2 years, and you know, it's just been amazing as we started with this. Like we work with the same folks, the same pastors, and we've just seen church after church, just like you, just as they begin to focus, as they begin to align and say, okay, what is it that we're here for? Why are we here for? And one of the things that we say is, 100-watt light bulb will lighten up a room, but a 100-watt laser will cut through steel. And a lot of this process is just about us getting laser focused on why we're here. What is it that we're here to do, and how can we make the most effective use? You see, it all comes down to stewardship. You have a budget of about $400,000, and we ask the question, well, where are people coming to faith in Christ? And I say, well, we've had 10 people or 12 people. You take that amount, that number, and you divide it by your budget, and that's how much it costs you to make a disciple per year. When we talk to churches about that, they have budgets of $100,000, and they say, well, no one's coming to faith. Yeah, no one's coming to Christ this past year or the year before. We're going to say, well, how do you feel about that? Are you okay with that? And they'll often say, no, we're not okay with that. Because we know that as a church, we want to make an impact in this community. Have you ever watched the movies Transformations? Have you ever seen those? They're old movies that maybe about 10, 15 years ago, maybe even longer. Anyway, we used to watch them in my church. And they were about churches and ministries that absolutely transformed communities. Like they were no longer the same places. Economics went up, jobs went up, crime went down. Like these churches and these ministries, whether they were in prisons or whether they were in small towns in North America or the world, other parts of the world, they absolutely transformed. And I genuinely believe that's possible. I genuinely believe that a church can transform a community. And when I look at this church, 5% of your population, you're about 200 people, the population here is about 4,500. I just think, oh my goodness, Bethel Pentecostal is on the tip of transforming Barrhead. But if we just kind of say, well, it's good enough, we just kind of coast and say, wow, we're okay the way we are, I think we're missing a huge opportunity of what God can do through us. We work with a church in southern Alberta. They were a church of about 70 people. We did the same kind of talk with them, just began to focus them on what does it mean to be an inviting church. Teaching the pastor said, I've never invited anyone to my church. Like in 20 years of my ministry, I've never once asked anyone to come to my church. I said to him, well, you must not be so confident in your preaching, hey? Oh, okay. He starts to learn, how do I invite? How do I have a spiritual conversation? And we just taught him a simple thing. Like, when you go get your meal, your server comes to bring your meal. Maybe before you just say to your server, hey, before I eat, I'm going to pray. Is there anything I can pray for you for? Simple conversation. And the server says, oh, no, I'm okay. Or the server says, yeah, actually, you could pray for this or pray for that. Sure, okay, I will. We taught that. One board member came and he used to go to a 7-Eleven to get coffee because he didn't like the church coffee. And so when we taught him that little how to have a spiritual conversation, the next time he went to the 7-Eleven, he went and got his coffee, went back to his car, and then remembered, oh yeah, goes back to the 7-Eleven and says, I'm just about to go to the church here, over here just down the road. Is there anything I can pray for you for while I'm there? And the lady at the 7-Eleven, the cashier said, oh no, I'm okay. And the other lady said, well, actually, you could pray for my sister, and pray for my mother. Then the lady who originally said no said, well, if you're going to pray for her, you can pray for me, And just these simple things. Now this pastor, he told me the other month when we saw him again, he says, I can't stop inviting people to church. I do it all the time. That church has gone from 70 to about 140. And they've seen a dozen or so conversions in that church where they hadn't seen anything before. There's one church that we worked with. It was 8 people. 8 people. The youngest person in the church was 62. She was the youth group. And they said, what can we do? We can't do anything. I said, listen, can you make a pot of coffee? And they said, well, yeah, we can do that. Why don't you make a pot of coffee and host a grief share? Because, of course, a lot of their friends were passing away, so they knew a lot of people in grief. And so they did that. They thought, we don't even have any money to do that. Well, go to the funeral home and talk to them. So they did. The funeral home sponsored that grief share program, even bought them the coffee, because they couldn't afford their own coffee, because they were only 8 people. They held their first grief share. They had 15 people, not from their church, in attendance. Out of that 15 people, 7 of them started to attend the church. Out of 7 of them that started to attend the church, 5 of them accepted Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. They told me that on Mother's Day, they had 32 people in the church. It went from 8 to 32. That's 286% growth. That's pretty significant. All from just having a pot of coffee. And story after story, what we hear is these churches that are saying, you know what? We're not comfortable anymore just having our Sunday services and having our potlucks and doing our thing and saying to the community, you know what? We don't care about you. No, we want to be a place where we're constantly asking, who's not yet in the room? Who's not yet here? Every time we do something for us, I hope and I pray that someone's asking, who's not yet in the room? There are people in Barrhead and in the surrounding area that aren't yet here. Who's advocating for them? Who's advocating for them? It needs to be you. It needs to be you in this room who's advocating for the people who aren't yet here. And when we make our choices about what we're going to do or what programs we're going to run or what services are going to look like, I pray that you will advocate for the person who's not yet here. Now, we're not just thinking about ourselves or what we like, but you're thinking about the person who's not yet in the room. Jesus commands us and calls us to lay down our life, to lay down our preferences, to sacrifice. And sacrificing is giving up something we love for something we love even more. And I love your community. I'm passionate for your community, for people who are far from God. And I want to see them find Jesus and be introduced to Jesus and taught how to follow Jesus. Because I believe on the other side of this weekend are thousands of souls that will come to know Jesus Christ because of your ministry and because of your church. And I just want to inspire you and remind you, this is why we're here. This is why we're here. And I'm believing for great and mighty things through you, through your ministry in Barrhead and the surrounding area. So if you would just allow me to just pray a blessing over you in this church, I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Bob. When you read the report tomorrow, you will go, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, because you'll have heard all of the stuff that John and I have just taught you in that report. You shouldn't be surprised by the things that you see tomorrow when we roll it out, because honestly, this is just about focusing the church on the main thing. Why are we here? What is it all for? And how can we make even a bigger impact on the community of Barrhead? So let's just pray for our community and for our church. So Father, I thank you for Bethel. I thank you for each person in this room who's committed of their time, their talent, their treasure to the church. I thank you for the hearts that are here that love this community, that love this church, that love the people in this church and outside this church. I thank you for them. I thank you for the ministries. Father, I pray for each person here that you would just comfort them, give them peace, give them encouragement, Lord, that you would remind them that you have called them, that you have placed them here in this church, in this leadership position for such a time as this. Father, we think about the people in this community. Even some of us have interacted with them already this week. The person serving us at the co-op or at the NW, or our neighbor or our friend or our co-worker who don't know you, or maybe have gone to church one point in their life but have never gone back. We think about those people right now because, Lord, we know that they're on your heart as well. And we ask, oh the Lord, for your favor with them. We ask, Lord, that you would utilize us, Father, as your witnesses, talking and telling about what you've done in our lives and inviting them to come and to meet you. So, Father, I pray that you would remind us, Father, of our mission as a church, as individuals, to fulfill the great commission that you've called us to. And Lord, give us boldness, give us favor, give us courage. Give us wisdom, Lord, innovation and creativity. In all things that we do, Lord, we seek to glorify you. We seek to make your name famous here in Barrhead and the surrounding communities. Pray for Pastor Bob and the board and the team that's looking for a new pastor. We pray for your favor upon them, your wisdom, Lord, your guidance and direction and courage, Lord. And as they make those decisions, Lord, I pray that they would, as they seek to hear from you, you would speak so clearly to them in their hearts, and that they would move forward in the direction that you've called them. Now, this is your church. It's not our church. It's not POC church. It's your church. And so we ask, Lord God, that you would do a mighty work in us and through us and in this community. In your name we pray, and we all say together, amen and amen. Pastor Paul, thank you.
Oh, this has been good, hasn't it?
Yeah.
We should say thank you. And I know they appreciate the applause, but knowing these guys, I think the thing that they really appreciate the most is that in 6 months from now or 8 months from now, they'll look at Bethel and they'll go, wow, look what's happening up there. That's what's going to enrich their lives and bless them. And so I wanted to ask you a couple of things. Just look around at the people in the room that are here. Your people. This is family, right? And I was thinking as I was listening to Jeremiah and John that you're on the leading edge of history for Bethel. That you, because you showed up today and you have an interest and you're leading already, and there's other people in your tribe, as it were, you're going to be on the leading edge of what Bethel will be tomorrow, because you're shaping it today. And that's exciting. So when you look around and you see people who are here, think back in 2 weeks or 2 months from now, and just think about what you heard, maybe what you're now teaching, because you've learned it, and you're learning it as you teach it to the people that you're leading, and the changes that are coming in. That's exciting. Jeremiah said about tomorrow. So what's going to happen tomorrow is Pastor John's going to be speaking about keeping the main thing the main thing. So we'll have worship. Dwayne is leading us, and then John will share. John will finish his message somewhere around 10 to 12, quarter to 12, and then Jeremiah's going to get up and share what would be 5 things that this weekend has kind of shown us. And so we're going to meet with the board right after this meeting and go through those 5 things. And then once that's discussed, have the opportunity for Jeremiah to share that tomorrow. So that's what he was referring to in the report. Every person in the church will get a copy of the report. And so this is going to happen at the end of the service. So you guys will be primed for that. And the next thing, though, is to please make sure you have in your calendars Tuesday, October 29th, 7 o'clock. That will be our town hall meeting. And the meeting is significant because Bethel will come together that night, all of Bethel, everybody who's interested. And again, as the board sees these 5 things, and as they think that they're good to present, and we present them tomorrow, on the 29th, the church will come together, and there'll be an opportunity for the church to say, yes, we want to do this. And so we would have a vote. People would come together and say, yes, this is what we want to be involved in. And then after that evening, that's when the board would then say, okay, it looks like this is what Bethel wants to do, so we'll get busy and start doing it. If there's a different outcome, then that's what the board will have to deal with as well. But the 29th will become huge because it's a time for questions, and it's a time to, in a unified way, be able to move forward. So please make sure that's a priority date for you guys, Tuesday night, October 29th, 7 o'clock, and we'll be right here. Good. Well, again, I'm not sure if you have any questions for Jeremiah and John, anything that might need clarification. They're going to hang around for a few moments. Tomorrow morning, looking forward to seeing High Octane. It's our kids program. And so, well, John, I'll just let you know now. Sometime while you're speaking, I'll probably migrate over here and have a peek into the gym and just be a part of what's going on in there. It sounds like a great, I've heard lots of good things about that, so looking forward to that. All right, anything, Teresa, we need to do here to help, like, shut down and stuff?
Well, if they could help with the tables and chairs, I don't know if I have somebody, I'll have to ask Denise, but if we could just kind of clean this up, so, because I think High Octane's coming in to set up, so if we could get our part out of the way, that would be great, if you can do that.
So what we would need to do is have a table